Yes. All right. All right. So here's a hub. You're familiar with that.
Yep.
With the new version of the Go exec of the hub, there's this tab here called the Go exec.
Yep.
All right. And so there's an enable button, and if you disable it, these guys go away. So when you first look at this, the only thing you see is settings and an enable.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you hit the enable, the IP address will be auto-populated, and so will the port number. And if you'll hit a save and apply, and it'll go ahead and check to make sure that it can find an Iridium GO there and that the port number is correct. If there's a PIN number, then you need to check there and put the PIN number in. So, so as soon as, so there's error detection and correction in this form. So you need to Wi-Fi connect to the Go. You can either do that from, the standard. You can go to settings. I'm sorry, you can go to settings, and you can go to Wi-Fi, and you can scan. Come on, baby. You can scan for the Go, right? And it'll show up in the list. Of course, it's not going to be here because it's in another building.
Yeah.
Or you can Ethernet connect to it. So
Okay.
the Ethernet connection goes from the WAN port on the hub to the Ethernet port on the Go.
Yep.
Either one will work. Otherwise, if you do a scan, you'll see the Go show up here in the list, and then you can hit join, and you can just pair to it, just like you would any other Wi-Fi hotspot.
Yep.
So once you've done that, and you've got connectivity to the Go exec, then you would go here to Iridium GO exec, and you would hit enable, and then you would hit save and apply. And at that point, it's going to make sure that the IP address, indeed, it can access the Go, indeed, that it is at the correct port number. If you enable the PIN on the unit, then of course this will fail, and it'll tell you that there's no PIN code, and so you'll have to enable the PIN and put the PIN code in. So the PIN code is enabled on the little console of the Go. When you first start the Go and you go through the wizard, it'll ask you if you want to put in a PIN code, and that's just an option. And so if you do, then you'll have to enter it here. Otherwise, we won't be able to access it.
Copy.
All right. Now, once you do the save and apply, you're live. And if you go to the status tab here, you will see the signal strength and the status. So we basically have 5 bars. And then you'll have basically your phone numbers, your IMEI. There is no ACC ID, and I've left this here because I've complained to Iridium because we really need to have the SIM card number.
Yeah.
But that's not made available to us yet, so I just left it there so that people would complain, so that Iridium eventually would get that to us.
Yeah.
Of course, you've got the firmware version number, and then
I'm going to stop you there. That's the firmware version of the exec.
that's the firmware version of the exec. That is correct.
Okay. Cool.
Now, of course, when they run the exec app on their phone and they Wi-Fi connect to it, if there's a new version, then it'll upgrade the firmware on the thing. But this will just tell you what the version is, so that if there's a support question and they call in, you can ask them, you can't ask them what the SIM card number is, but you can ask them what the phone numbers are, and they can give that to you. And so so this will give you some support access. Of course, this is all available in the Go app as well.
Yeah.
But that's where we are there. And then it'll give you the status as to it's connected. Now, there's also this connection control, this connection tab here. And the connection tab does essentially the same thing as the I'm going to just make my screen a little bigger. So it's okay. So yeah, so it does basically the same thing as the connection control on the Go app. So you can bring up connections and take down connections from this screen, just like you can from the phone. So if somebody wanted to, for example, use WhatsApp on the unit from their computer, they could just come here. They could select the WhatsApp profile, and then they could hit connect, and then at that point, that will initiate a connection on the Go exec with the firewall settings set to just only allow WhatsApp through.
Cool. So what if you wanted to do multiple ones within the DataHub?
So so the each Wi-Fi connection can specify kind of a firewall rule, but it gets a little complicated when you have multiple users using it at once. Now, having multiple users use the offshore app, for example, or do tracking through the Go exec or do a WhatsApp session is not an issue.
Okay.
But I mean, so if I enable WhatsApp right now and someone Wi-Fi connects to the hub, they can do WhatsApp as well. Now,
Yep.
they won't be able to do anything else. So if as long as people are Wi-Fi connecting to the hub, they can do whatever profile is up and running. By the way, you see that we are up and running. When you create
Yep.
the profile, you specify a duration, and so
Yep.
here's the counter. This is how long
Yep.
we've done, and this is how much data we've consumed, and we're using the WhatsApp profile. All right.
So what if you wanted multiple profiles at the same time? Like you want to have WhatsApp and the offshore app open and Facebook.
Okay, so what you have to do at that point is you have to create a custom profile.
Yep.
All right. And so I'm just going to disconnect real quick here, and I'll show you how to do that. Now you can create custom profiles from the Go app on the phone, or you can do it here. All right.
Okay. And so you can only have one of their profiles, their pre-programmed profiles up and running, and then everything else has to be a custom one?
That is correct. And if you take a look here, we have the Go comes with these profiles, right? So you got
Yep.
browsing, Facebook, Gmail, WhatsApp, Teams, Outlook, WeChat, Apple, iMessage, and
Yep.
all blocked.
Yep.
So these are all the standard. These are all the
Yep.
standard ones. And now the email one is one that I created. I'm not using
Okay.
it, but it's there, and we'll take a look at that and see how to do that. Now, the thing is that when you run an application like the Go, like the offshore app, for example, or Iridium Mail and Web, those applications communicate directly with the Go, and so if you have a WhatsApp profile running, when you do an offshore app, the Iridium Go will create a sub-profile for that application, which will allow that application to use the offshore app without affecting the primary profile that you're running. But you can only have one primary profile running at any given time. So
Okay.
when you use the Go app, or when you use this, you can only have one of these profiles running at any given time.
Yeah.
But if you want to be able to allow multiple things at the same time, then you're going to have to go create your own profile.
Right, understood. But if you had the WhatsApp profile up and running and then you used the offshore app, you could do that because the offshore app has built-in
Communication.
Yeah.
Yep. And
communication.
yep. And it instructs the Go to create a sub profile for it.
Yeah.
And it's a temporary thing because as soon as it shuts down, then it goes away.
Cool.
So
And
basically,
will PredictMail do the same?
PredictMail, yeah, absolutely. So PredictMail will absolutely do that. It'll create a sub profile just like the offshore app will.
Yeah, cool.
And so there's no issue. So you can be doing tracking. You can have the WeChat running, and then the tracking and email will work in the background without any issue.
Yeah. So it's only if you want to have, like if you're jumping between WhatsApp and Gmail and Facebook, you need to have custom profiles for Gmail and Facebook if you've got WhatsApp as your primary.
Exactly, or you have to disconnect and then reconnect with the different profiles and switch between the different profiles. And the same is true with the app, right?
Yeah.
So
So you can do this either through the DataHub, what you've got here, or the exec app on your device.
Exactly.
Your phone.
This basically emulates the same functionality as the exec app, but it allows you to do it from a browser instead of having to run the app. So you can do this from a computer instead of having to go find the phone to bring up a session so that you can run your browser on the computer or whatever.
Yeah, got it.
All right.
Cool. Yep.
Yep. Now in the firewall profiles, you have a profile, for example, and I have one created here for PredictMail, right? So there it is. And the profiles, when you add a profile, you get to select whether you've got DNS blocking or not,
Yeah.
whether it's a deny or an allow rule,
Yep.
and you give it a name. So those are the only things that you do when you create the profile, and then you attach rules to it, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. So
Okay, this is a really dumb question, but this is what you're dealing with. What's a DNS blocking?
Okay, so so when you go to a website, google.com, and you put that in your browser, The internet doesn't know what Google is. The internet only knows how to deal with IP addresses. It doesn't know how to deal with names. And so there's a global database called Domain Name Services that does a lookup every time you put in a name into a browser that queries this database and then returns back the IP address.
Okay.
Now, DNS is typically bad because everything on your computer and everything on your phone that wants to access the internet is doing DNS. And so DNS drives a lot of traffic. So if you have DNS open, right, then you spend a lot of airtime just querying for all these names. Even though the firewall is blocked, it doesn't matter because you're still querying for the names. And then once you've got the IP address, you try to connect to the internet. And you can't because the firewall is not allowing you, but you still generated a lot of traffic because you did a DNS lookup.
Right, understood.
So,
okay, so normally that would be off.
So DNS blocking basically says don't allow DNS, don't allow DNS to happen, right?
Yeah.
Now, when you look at the rules, as we'll see in a minute, when you specify a name like predictmail.com, then what happens is DNS is allowed for that particular domain, but only that domain, all right? And so typically if you were going to do WhatsApp, for example, you really only need access to whatsapp.net and whatsapp.com. So you would enable DNS blocking so that you wouldn't do a bunch of DNS lookups. And then when you go to create your firewall rules, which I'll show you here, so I'll just edit this. You create a firewall rule, all right? And so you attach it to a profile. So a profile can have numerous rules, and then you can specify an IP address or a host name, right? And that host name, if you got DNS blocked, because you put that host name there, DNS will be permitted for that. So you'll block all the translations out there except for mail.predictwind.com. And then, of course, you specify the start port, the end port, and then the protocol, and then you and you can be UDP and TCP or UDP or TCP, whichever you want, and then you hit save, and so that profile is attached to email. So you can have any number of rules attached to that particular profile, right?
Right. Yeah.
So we could have done, for example, we could have had instead of having one rule that does ports 80 through 3333, we could have had one rule for 80, we could have had one rule for 443, and we could have had one rule for 3333, right? So you would have three specific rules for mail.predictwind.com associated with that one particular profile.
Yep.
All right. So when you go back to your connection control and you look here and you select the profile, here's the profile, right? It will basically allow all those firewall rules that are associated with that particular profile. So if you wanted WhatsApp, then you would have a rule for whatsapp.com, whatsapp.net. Then you would have a rule for facebook.com. You would have a rule for blah, and you just create these rules, and then you just add them to that particular profile. And then when you enable that profile, the firewall will be open for those particular services.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
All right.
Yep. Cool.
Okay. And then the only other thing here is the syslog, which basically tells you basically what's happening, just kind of debugging information. Nothing particularly useful for the end user, but if we're trying to figure out what's happening, like for example, when I brought up a connection, it said connected. When I took down the connection, it said disconnected. If tracking is happening, you'll see the connected up, running, to connected down. So here, for example, we selected a profile WhatsApp. We have signal strength of 2, session time, blah, blah. We brought up a connection, we ran it, and then we disconnected. So that's just a standard. So this is basically the general interface for the Go exec. Right.
Yeah, so that's still all just in the exec page.
All we've done is we've told the Go, we've told the hub how to communicate with the exec, and we did that for several reasons. One, because we want PredictMail to work, we want tracking to work, we want AIS to work, and we want pollers to work.
Yep.
All right. Now I'll go show you how to do that. Now the other thing, of course, is that anybody who is Wi-Fi connected to the hub has access to the Go exec. So you can have your phone Wi-Fi connected to the hub, and you can still make phone calls, and you can still use the Go app to bring up and take down connections and do everything you would as if you were Wi-Fi connected to the Go exec.
Right.
All right.
So you'd recommend, if people had the hub, you'd recommend that they connect to the hub and then the hub's connected to the exec, as opposed to
Either way they want to do it. I mean, they can do it either way. They can connect their phone directly to the Go exec and do it that way, or they can connect to the hub and do it that way. It's whatever's more convenient, right? You know, if the Go exec happens to be at the very back of the boat because the antenna cable length was too short and they don't have Wi-Fi access to the Go exec, they can run an Ethernet cable all the way forward.
Yep.
And then they can Wi-Fi connect to the hub and access all the functions and the features of the Go exec. In my case, the Go exec is in a totally different building.
Yep.
In a closet, and there's no way I can Wi-Fi connect to it. You saw when I did a scan, I didn't see it. But I can access all those features from down here because I can Wi-Fi connect my phone to my hub, and I have access to the Go exec. All right.
Okay, cool. Yep.
All right. So so let's go to NMEA. So NMEA, you know, we connect. We have GPS and whatever coming in. If you go to AIS and you enable AIS, you will see that there is a button here that says transmit AIS messages stored in persistent memory over Iridium GO exec if available. All right. And so what will happen is you're disconnected. You're collecting AIS messages, they're going onto the SD card, but when you do a tracking session that brings up the internet, right, all of a sudden the AIS subsystem will discover that there's an internet connection. It'll take all those AIS targets and send them up.
Right.
All right?
Okay, cool.
All right, so you've got that. All right, so now let's go to tracking. Under tracking, you will see that you've got something called least cost routing. Now, this least cost routing under transport will only show up if there's an Iridium GO. If there's no Iridium GO connected, then you'll only see network internet connection. Now, least cost routing, fail over to Go exec, right? Basically means I'm going to try the internet first.
Yep.
And if I can't get through, then I'm going to fail over to the Go exec.
Right.
So,
and then is it set up for to automatically try every hour to the, is it every hour to the cellular and then it'll revert to exec, or?
The default is 15 minutes.
Yep.
And you can set that to anything you want to. So you can set it to 60 minutes, you can set it to 15, you can set it to whatever you want. Yep. And then it'll try to establish a connection to the internet. So if you've got Starlink, for example, on your boat, it'll go through Starlink. Yep. But if Starlink is not working because you're because I don't know why, then it'll fail over to a Go exec, and it'll do that automatically.
Understood.
Now, so let me just explain this pool thing, because you don't get that when you go to normally on the internet connection you only see the interval, but when I go to least cost routing, you see a pool. That's kind of important because the minimum billing increment for a Go exec is 5 kilobytes. A tracking position report is about 200 bytes.
Yep.
So it costs you a lot of money to send a position report every 15 minutes, right? But say you still want 15-minute tracking. If you set the pool to 4, what that means is that it'll only send position reports on the fourth one. So it'll connect. Every 15 minutes it'll sample, and in an hour, then it'll go ahead and send all 4 of them at the same time.
Yeah, so it's sort of doing the same as the YB3i, where we collect every hour but send every 2. So understood.
Exactly. So here we're collecting every 15 minutes and sending once an hour.
Yeah.
And here we're collecting every 15 minutes and sending once every other hour.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. So so you'll want to do that. Now it's important because when we go talk about the email, we want to do an email check when we do a tracking check. Because why not? I've got 5 kilobytes to burn, so I might as well check my email while I'm there and download any email that I've got, because I've opened up a connection and I've paid for it anyway.
Yeah.
So if I go to Predict Mail, and you'll see this in the video that I just made for you, I talk about this just briefly, but under connection, again, you'll see least cost routing.
Yep.
And again, you've got the pool here, all right? And the pool is, you know, maybe we may not want to send one email. We want to send 5 emails or 10 emails, right? We want to collect them before we send them, because the more emails you've got, the better the compression.
Yep.
the cheaper your effective byte is. So you've got the same concept with the emails as you do with the tracking, but also you have this on schedule polling interval, right? So if you
Yep.
set that, then on tracking polling interval. There you go. Every time you do a tracking report, it'll go ahead and check the email, send any emails that you've got stored. If the number of emails that you have is equal to the pool value you've set, and it'll check to see if you've got any emails on the server, and it'll download them.
Okay.
Now, one irritating thing about the Go exec is that there's no way for the server to tell the Go exec that there's mail on the server. All email transactions have to be originated by the client. If the client doesn't check, he's not going to get email. There's no way for us to say, send the unit an SMS message and say, oh, you've got email, you might want to download it, right? We can't do that. And so anyway, so that's why we have it on the tracking interval. So they have it on the tracking interval whenever they do a tracking report every 15 minutes or once an hour. At least they'll check in to see if they've got an email, and it'll download the email for them if they do have that.
Yep.
All right.
Cool.
So let's see. So that covers everything, I think. We got AIS, we got tracking. Polars, that's just going to be sent anyway. If you've got polars turned on, they're going to be sent with the tracking intervals.
Yep.
I think that's it.
Okay, cool. And so that's awesome. That gives us, I'm going to share that around the team because it's more than I've ever understood about the DataHub, so that's awesome.
Okay.
So for this customer that I've got that needs onboarding, I need to check, but I'm not sure they have the DataHub yet, so, and whether it's all set up. So just thinking of the best way to do it.
So they'll definitely want to have the DataHub because, I mean, did they buy Predict Mail as well?
I'm just double checking that now. Stand by.
Okay. Do you want me to stop this recording, or?
You can stop the recording.